This actually comes out of, and Pastor Jeff may remember this, that I think it was the first message that I preached when I came back to church after being gone for 2 years or however long I was gone. And I titled it just simply Getting God Out of the Box. And I love talking about how big God is. The reason I love talking about how big God is because simply Christianity today, we like to package God up in some box and put a bow on it and make it all pretty so we can present it to people. And the bad thing of it is God doesn't fit in a box. And so I just like to kind of get him out of the box a little bit. And so we're going to look at some things. And like I said, this is kind of based on that message almost 2 years ago now, I guess, a little over a year and a half. And this is kind of the expanded version of that message. This will be kind of the deeper version. Anybody know what we're looking at here? It's the Milky Way. It's the Milky Way galaxy. Actually, when we get out of Bible study tonight, you might be able to see it if you look up. It'll be a band of stars in the sky if the clouds are favorable. Milky Way galaxy. It's beautiful. It is also vast. God declared that in the beginning He made the heavens and the earth. So obviously He made this. And what we're going to look at here, hopefully, is just how big is this that we're looking at. And just how big is God that He actually made this. God's universe is so big that we had to create something, a new measurement of time in order to measure it, called a light year. Now, light year is simply the distance that light would travel in a year. Light travels 186,000 miles per second. That's huge. And so in order to get the full number, 186,282 miles per second, times it by 60 seconds, times it by 60 minutes, by 24 hours, 365 days. So this is the distance that light travels in a year. It's a massive number. That is 5,874,904,512,000 miles. Now we round that up and make it an easier number to comprehend, and that's 5.88 trillion miles in a year. So that's what a light year is, 5.88 trillion miles. Now the Milky Way galaxy consists of billions of stars. And we are simply one of hundreds of billions of galaxies in the known universe. We are just one of many, 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 many galaxies. Now we can zoom in, and this is one of the red splotches on that image. And this is actually a zone in the Milky Way galaxy that forms stars. Stars are birthed here. And scientists have estimated that if you counted each star in the Milky Way galaxy, if you were somehow able to keep count of them and keep track of which ones you counted, and you counted one every second, it would take you about 2,500 years to count them all. So 2,500 years to count every star just in the Milky Way galaxy. Now this isn't the whole universe, this is just our little corner of the universe, the Milky Way. It would take you 2,500 years to count every star in our galaxy. And, you know, the Bible says in Isaiah 40, it says, "Who will you compare me to, or who is my equal?" This is God speaking, of course. Look up and see who created these. He brings out the starry host by number. He calls all of them by name. Because of His great power and strength, not one of them is missing. Here's a composite shot of the Milky Way galaxy. Again, this is our galaxy. We've never actually traveled far enough outside of our galaxy to get a photograph, so this isn't an actual photograph, but this is what scientists think that our galaxy looks like. It's big. Anybody want to guess from end to end how many miles or light years it would be?
I have no idea.
I used to know.
It's 100,000 light years from end to end. It's 100,000 light years. So if you were somehow able to travel 186,000 miles every second, it would take you 100,000 years to traverse from one end to the other. That's a massive, massive, massive amount. So Earth is there. Can anybody point Earth out? Surely we have to be in the middle, because today's gospel says it's all about us and me. So surely we've got to be right there in the middle. Well,
We're actually on the edge, aren't we?
we're right about there. Right about there. Can't really see Earth. There's a reason for that. Everybody knows what our solar system is, right? We are in a solar system. Our sun is the center of it. Things revolve around it. Our solar system consists of all the planets that we know of, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, Mars, so on and so forth. We can't even actually see our solar system in this picture. Now, I tried, I don't have a quarter, but if you had a quarter, and just to kind of put this in perspective, if you had a quarter and you wanted to take our galaxy down to something that is relative to the size of a quarter, our solar system would be the quarter, and our galaxy would be the whole continent of North America. So now you understand why you can't see it. That's our Earth. This was taken by Apollo 17, and here we are. That's home. Can't see it even in a view of our galaxy, but there we are. Neil Armstrong, when he was returning home from Apollo 11, he was looking and he seen the Earth, and he had this to say about it. He said, "I remember on the trip home on Apollo 11, it suddenly struck me that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the Earth. I put up my thumb and shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out the planet Earth." This is the conclusion he reached. He said, "I didn't feel like a giant." He said, "I felt very, very small." We are small. We really are small. We really are not. I know people like to think that we really are the center of the universe. We're not. Here's another picture. This was taken by Voyager. It's called the pale blue dot. Very, very famous picture. This is actually 60 pictures in a panorama. They've composited them and put them together. This was taken in 1990. This was 13 years after Voyager launched. It was about 4 billion miles away from the Earth when it took this. And so each picture is, I can't remember how many pixels it was. I think it was like 160,000 pixels was each picture. But each pixel took 5.5 hours to get back to Earth. That's how far away Voyager was. It took months and months and months and months for us to actually get this. And scientists were shocked at what they saw. And we see the ribbons of light here. That's actually because the sun was in view of Voyager. That's the sun's rays reflecting off of its lens. And if you look real close, you can actually see Earth. right there. That's Earth from 4 billion miles away. That is Earth from 4 billion miles away. Just barely noticeable.
I'm surprised you can see it at all. Yeah.
But there it is. And scientists were just in shock and awe of the picture. Speaking of the sun being the rays, this is our sun. We like to think of our sun. We draw pictures of it, cartoon pictures, and we draw a smiley face on it and all this stuff. It's a happy thing. The sun is actually quite vitriolic. It's quite dangerous, quite violent. This is our sun. This image is taken by the Hubble telescope. The sun is 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It only takes just a few minutes from to get the light from the sun to the Earth. And that's about 93 million miles away. So it just takes a couple minutes. Anybody know how big the sun is compared to the Earth?
Fit 100 Earths, can't you?
More than that.
1,000, I don't remember.
What is it?
How big is the Earth compared to the sun?
There's a million Earths compared to the sun.
1 million Earths. It is 1 million times the size of Earth. You can actually fit 960,000 Earths inside of the sun. And if the Earth were a golf ball, then 960,000 golf balls, that's enough to fill up a school bus. Just so you get some perspective. That is a massive amount. And here you go. There's the approximate size of the Earth in relation to the sun. We're very tiny. Here's one of the closest pictures we have of the sun. I think the Swedes were doing research on the sun. They wanted to see just how close they could get pictures, and they're wanting to study it. And
Is it a solid mass, the sun?
It is just a ball of fire and energy erupting out of it.
It's like helium and nitrogen, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a ball of gas.
That's all it is, and it's actually consuming itself.
Yeah.
It's about halfway through its life.
Yeah. People say some crazy stuff. I've heard people say, I'd like to have been there when God created everything. I don't know that I would want to be there when God created everything, because when God spoke and He said, let there be light, well, there was light, and it came roaring out of His mouth at 186,000 miles per second. Think about that. I mean, that is what God created. Without lifting a finger, He spoke it, and that came bellowing out of His mouth. It's amazing to me. Scientists have done their science, and mathematicians have done their math, and somehow they have figured out that if you were to cut all of the power going out from the U.S., and all of our power plants were just producing power and able to store it somehow, and they pointed it at the sun and were able to beam all that energy at the sun, it would take us roughly 7 million years of producing power in order to power the sun for 1 second. That is how powerful the sun is. I don't think I'd want to be there when God created that. Here's another star. By the way, everybody knows that our sun is just a star, right?
Medium size.
Yeah, it's very small in comparison. This is Betelgeuse. This is here's another view. This is actually captured in the night sky. You can actually see Betelgeuse on very rare occasions. You can see Betelgeuse very brightly, and that's Betelgeuse. Now, Betelgeuse is 427 light years away from Earth. 427 light years away. Now that's 5.88 trillion times 427. I don't know that math. I can't do that math, but that's the distance in miles that it is away. Now, Betelgeuse is big. It's about twice the size You thought I was going to say twice the size of our sun. It's actually not twice the size of our sun. It's twice the size of Earth's orbit around our sun.
Yeah, I think, don't you feel like a million suns in it?
I don't know how many suns you can fit in Betelgeuse, but it is massive. 262 trillion Earths would fit inside of Betelgeuse.
How do they know this?
Well, they can look and just, I mean, there's ways that you can measure the distance of the Earth and how big.
A lot of it's through trigonometry.
Yeah.
How do you know?
And if I'm
A
not
lot
mistaken,
of it's through trigonometry. What they'll do is you're using the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I used it all the time.
Well,
what
that
they'll
was
do-
his name when you put A's and B's and C's in it.
Well,
Like, forget it.
What they'll do is this. They know where they'll get the elliptical pattern of the Earth's orbit around the sun. They'll start from here, and then they'll measure here. And that distance, they use that kind of as a platform because the surface of the Earth is too small to be able. So they have to literally use from point A to point B, and then they use that kind of as a base to measure off of, and they triangulate. So by watching and observing where the thing is at certain points in time in our solar system, or watching it, seeing it in the atmosphere, then they're able to determine like a distance. Of course, I mean, it's way beyond what something I can do, but
Einstein made it work.
they'll establish a distance that it travels, and then by
But they're pretty confident that they've got the right
yeah, and to give
Yeah.
somebody, and I was checking my facts before I said because but the Earth moves at 64,000 miles an hour around the sun. It's covering 93 million miles in a year. So I mean, when you take twice that big, that's massive.
Yeah.
That doesn't make
But
sense.
again, the triangulation is the way that they're literally using trigonometry.
Yeah.
And the same way that I put it this way so we can understand. Triangulation is what they do when you get on your phone. You go to Google Maps and you're showing yourself going. The same thing with the TomTom or whatever, and you can see yourself going. It tells you how fast you're doing. All that is doing by triangulation. It's started from here, bouncing up to the satellite, coming down. And they know this distance, and they literally are calculating your speed by just where you are in reference to the satellites and stuff like that. So by triangulation, they're able to do that, and they're using that on a much larger scale. Now, I don't know how they know from one point, but I know I've studied because I've wanted them myself, and I know that they literally are using the elliptical pattern of the Earth's orbit around the sun, and they know how long it takes us to go from here to here, and that distance, and then they take that distance, and somehow that's kind of their established point. What you'd call if using the datum point. So it's
way over my head.
That's basically kind of Einstein's theory of relativity. They use that a lot because that Einstein's theory is used to measure very vast distances and very vast speeds. So Einstein's theory is held up. Here's a close-up of Betelgeuse. Again, that's with the Hubble telescope. I think that's probably one of the closest shots we have of Betelgeuse. So 262 trillion Earths would fit inside Betelgeuse. And again, big numbers, we don't understand them, we can't comprehend them. But again, if the Earth were a golf ball, Betelgeuse would be as tall as about 6 Empire State Buildings stacked one on the other. The Empire State Building is a massive building. You go to New York and look at it, it is a massive building. So 6 of them stacked on top of each other. That is enough golf balls to fill up the Superdome 3,000 times. 3,000 times. It's big. It's big. Here's another one that's called Mu Cephei, and that's right up here. It's that star right up there. Mu Cephei is the name of it. It's 3,000 light years away. 2.7 quadrillion Earths would fit inside of Mu Cephei. Now, quadrillion is a really big number. So we go from millions, and we add 3 zeros, and we get billions. We add 3 zeros, we get trillions. We add 3 more zeros, and then we get quadrillions. And because y'all are kind of looking at me weird, let me break it down this way. 1,000,000 seconds ago would be 12 days ago. 1,000,000 seconds ago would be 12 days ago. So 1,000,000,000 seconds ago, a couple months ago? No, that's 32 years ago. 1,000,000,000 seconds ago is 32 years ago. So 1,000,000,000,000 seconds ago.
1,000,000,000 seconds.
Almost.
Well, almost. Wait, that was wrong. Thanks for catching that.
I was not born 1,000,000,000 seconds ago. 1,000,000,000,000 seconds ago is 31,709 years ago. So what about 1,000,000,000 seconds ago? It's 30,800,000 years ago. This is quadrillion. It's a massive, massive number. So 2.7 quadrillion Earths would fit inside of Mu Cephei. So if the Earth were a golf ball, Mu Cephei would be the width of 2 Golden Gate bridges end to end. Massive. Massive, massive, massive. We'll look at one more star. The bright blue one there, that is Canis Majoris. It is the largest known star. 7 quadrillion Earths would fit inside that star. Now remember, we're talking about stars. We're not talking about galaxies or anything. These are just stars inside of our galaxy. These are stars inside of our galaxy. So 7 quadrillion Earths would fit inside. So if the Earth were a golf ball, Canis Majoris would be the height of Mount Everest. The height of Mount Everest. And if you were to have 7 quadrillion golf balls, you could cover the entire state of Texas with them. 22 inches deep. So here's a nice little comparison. There's Canis Majoris, there's Mu Cephei, Betelgeuse, and you can't see our sun in comparison. Our sun, and in fact our whole solar system, is actually very, very, very small. No wonder Paul said in Romans to never overestimate ourselves. Now let's look at a constellation. This is Pleiades. You know Pleiades is mentioned in the Bible?
Actually, it is.
It is. It's mentioned in Job. When God is speaking to Job, Job has just accused God and blamed God and tried to counsel God. God is giving his very large speech to Job and declaring who he is and how little Job really is. But God has this to say. He asked Job, "Can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion?" Job obviously had to say no. But that implies that God is in fact able to do so. Isaiah 40 verse 12, "Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance." This is probably my favorite verse in the whole Bible. And that's saying a lot. who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and meted out heaven with the span. That literally means heaven. In a lot of different translations, it means everything that we can see, the whole universe that we are able to see. God meted out heaven with the span. What is the span? It literally means from thumb to finger. God, when he was looking and trying to decide how big of a universe should he create, he opened up his hand and looked at his thumb and his finger, and he said, yeah, I think that's about right. It's God. That is God. God holds the universe in his hand. Now, people say that we can't be alone in the universe. They say it's too vast, it's too big for us to be alone. It wouldn't make sense for us to be alone. And if you're looking at it from that kind of point of view, a secular point of view, they make sense because it has to be so vast. There has to be other people out there. We can't possibly be the only ones. But that's if you look at it from a secular point of view. What if you look at it from a godly point of view? What if the heavens, what if the universe isn't for us to be the center of, but what if it was to display God's glory?
And one of the things too that this is something to, because this kind of stuff is fascinating and I've read on it a lot. But I was listening to one astronomer, and I was mentioning this, I think, last night. But to support what you're saying as far as, and it goes back to where the Bible said the heavens declare his glory, that we are on one of the very, very few planets that they know of to where that we could actually see our space around us, to be able to see the stars. I know that because most doesn't even have an atmosphere to do it. And this guy, way more stuff than I can remember, but he began to list all the different things that's basic miracles that just the environment that our Earth has, from the atmosphere to be able to even allow us to see and to measure. I mean, just like with what Jessica, asked, how can you do that? It is crazy what man is able to do, but man is only able to do it because God created this planet to where it's even possible.
I think he wants us to see.
And that's what the astronomer, he said, whoever the creator is, he said one has to come to the conclusion that he wanted man to see him.
Yeah.
To see how vast that he was. Because all of this stuff is there. When you talked about Pleiades or Orion there in Job, I think Job knew there had to be a Pleiades and an Orion there, or Job would have not had a clue what God was talking about, and he would have been speaking Greek to someone that didn't understand what he's saying. So, and that's another thing, is the knowledge that men have had for millennia
About
outer space, that we today wonder how in the world, but there was something about the heavens but I'll tell you why men did. And they don't get a lot of credit for this, but it's really only been up to the last 150 years that science even speculated there was no God.
Right.
All of from Newton to whatever, all of our great scientists in the past were devout creationists and Christians.
Yeah.
So men looked into the heavens because they believed God would speak to them through that. So to them, it was a billboard from the Creator. So men spent the entirety of their lives studying it, passing it down to next generations, and I imagine had it not been that, I don't know if we would even understand what we understand now.
No.
Given if people just believe that it was a cosmic accident.
Right.
You know, and what you just showed, I mean, not only does evolution have, just have to account for life on planet Earth, but evolution has to account for everything you are showing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not seeing far more than we're seeing.
Right.
So I mean, when you think about all of the all of the things that had to take place, you're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of trillions of miracles
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
By random chance.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't do it.
No. No.
Now, especially on their theory, because their theory is now, and Stephen Hawking, he's the one that's pushing it. I watched a special he had on the creation of the universe. And basically, they believe that for whatever reason, there was a Big Bang, but it was more of a concentrated black hole that just kind of blew up, and it blew everything out. And that's why they say that on the outer edges of outer space, it's still expanding in light years, is because that's still blowing out, that force.
But Stephen Hawking's theory about black holes that they've never seen
It's
is
been,
now not holding true.
yeah,
And science is beginning to prove that.
light actually escapes since the gravitational pull's not that strong.
Yeah. And they're even now saying that there's not enough gravitational pull between planetary bodies to hold everything in place.
Right.
That there's a force that exceeds gravity. Because the force of gravity is not near what they originally thought that it was.
Now, is he the one that's been living for like
He's got
30
ALS.
years?
Yeah, he's multiple
Lou Gehrig's-
sclerosis or something
No,
like
He's
Lou
got
Gehrig's
ALS.
disease.
that. Is
Lou
he
Gehrig's
ALS?
Yeah, he's the longest living person with ALS.
Yeah. He sits at Oxford University, and he actually,
He can't talk.
that computer is amazing because it like knows his thoughts.
Yeah,
It's how
it reads his
talks.
thoughts.
It's weird. The Oxford
He can't
University
talk.
goes for it. Professors are good.
But, yeah, it's just,
I mean, it's
listen, we know what science thinks. That's basically all we know.
and it's what's really ironic about it. And when you show things like that, you give like Richard Dawkins his argument. If it is so big and God created everything, then why in the world is God mindful of this little speck in the middle of all this vastness? So if you look at it a secular viewpoint, I mean, you can come to that question: is if it's so big, then why is God even worried about this place? You know. But what the ironic thing about concerning evolution, where this come from, and what always amazes me, is and I'm sure you all know this, but Charles Darwin, who is actually not a biologist. He's nothing. He actually had a degree in divinity, of all things. And then he's the father of evolution.
I was like, wait, that's what I'm wondering.
I mean, but that's really what his degree was in. He's never went to any type of school for science. And, when he come about the theory of evolution based on finches and the Galapagos Islands, based on their beaks and what food they ate.
Yeah.
I just found that kind of ironic.
It's crazy. It's crazy what we espouse as truth.
Yeah.
And we don't know nothing.
I mean, and you have like Stephen Hawking, who's probably one of the most brilliant men to ever live, somehow buys off into this crap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's strange.
I think man, I think it's exactly what the Bible says. Man still wants to rebel against God. That was what caused the fall, and I believe the Bible when it says that we all know of God. I mean, everything testifies of Him. We can look and we can see the truth of God, but man wants to reject that because man doesn't want to be held accountable. And that's just the reality of it.
Well, I was looking at Psalms 8:5, where the psalmist said that God had created us a little lower than the KJV translated as the angels. The actual Hebrew word was Elohim, which literally is translated God.
God, yeah.
And that is where a lot of people don't understand, is that they don't understand the premium that God made that in humanity.
Yeah.
What
the creative ability, the personality,
the worth, everything, because God almost cloned himself
Yeah.
in man.
I mean, there's so much more to where it says that we were created in the image.
other than
God.
5 fingers and 5 toes on each hand, right?
There's so much more to that word image. It doesn't just mean, well, we
No.
kind of resemble him.
Physical.
I mean, it means that even our personalities and what we do, the mind that we have, that is all representative of God. Even free will, I believe, is special because it's representative of God.
Well, one of the amazing things is to think about, go all the way back to Genesis, where after God creates, he turns around and tells Adam, I want you to name him.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam literally named all this. I imagine he named much of what he, Orion and all that. Adam may have named that.
Yeah.
But
And when you think, well, he named all that. If he named all that, he remembered all that. I mean, we know that the brain is not, but we don't tap into its full capability. I mean, we don't know, possibly that after the fall that God kind of dumbed us down a little bit as far as our capacity. But I mean, when you think that Adam named everything, he remembered everything. You know what I mean? He remembered every animal. There was no repeat in it. I mean, if it was been left to me now, I might have named 10, 12 things a dog.
Yeah. It's hard to come up with some brand new name for something.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't think too much about that, but trying to actually come up with something new to describe something, to name something, that's actually a pretty difficult process.
but when you suddenly begin to think about that, what we were created as, then all of a sudden, to me, it gives validity to why we would be the lone species in all of this vastness.
Right.
And it's simply, on all of that was created for us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one astronomer said they're finding now that there's such complexity that without everything being, he talked like you could pull one thing out and it would literally start an implosion that the entire universe would literally begin to collapse in upon itself.
See,
That all of that is necessary for life to exist on planet Earth. And that's what this one astronomer said.
and I've heard that before they could ever see Pluto, they knew Pluto was there based on mathematics
Mm-hmm.
because of what it needed to hold our little universe here together. They knew that there was a 9th planet, which now it's a satellite now, but when I was a kid it was a planet. They knew there was a 9th planet out there.
They sure did, yeah. But it had to be there in order for
Yeah,
Because
for our orbit to stay where it is.
Because again, this isn't random. It's not chaos.
No,
There's order.
there is.
There's order and patterns to where we're able to see it, measure it, and know. I mean, that in itself, when men way before they had the technology to see it, but just because of
order.
the order,
That
That it had to
mathematics
be.
and everything.
that it had to be there. Mathematics is crazy because in all actuality, mathematics is really
Everything.
so far beyond numbers.
Yeah.
It's
When you get in heavy mathematics, you don't even have numbers anymore, hardly.
no, you don't, because it becomes. But then, whenever you look at on a mathematics level, mathematics then becomes, in all honesty, becomes theory.
Yeah. Mathematics is possible because of God. I mean, plain and simple. And I say that because scientists, and again, this is stuff that I've been studying on recently, scientists borrow from a Christian worldview in order to even do science. Because if science is right and there is no God, then there is nothing constant in the universe. There cannot be something constant because it all happened by random chance anyway. So that means if science is right and there is no God, there's no reason at all to believe that 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. There's none. We have a reason to believe that because God created order. So 2 plus 2 is always 4. We're going to wake up tomorrow. Gravity's not going to flip. We're not going to fly off the earth. Why? Because God created order.
Or it's going to get so hard, suck us flat. I mean, that's another thing about Earth. Earth is the perfect size that we're able to walk around. If it was the size of Jupiter, we'd be crushed. We couldn't walk on it. The gravitational pull would be so strong.
Exactly.
And your atmosphere can be to get, I mean, when you start mixing oxygen into an atmosphere, you're creating a very volatile. We've got just enough atmosphere that if you strike a match, it doesn't explode.
Don't bless up.
Seriously, I mean, I've read this stuff.
Yeah.
And men, as they begin to realize, they're like, God, you got just enough for that match to burn. You got enough for us to breathe. But if you had much change in concentration, the atmosphere would blow up.
That's
Boom! You know, because oxygen is very flammable. You know, I mean, it's just, and again, all of this stuff we know because God made it where we can know it. All because He wants us to know Him.
He does want us to know Him. And we don't always, I don't know if the gravity of that really hits us. He wants us to know Him. This is the Vela pulsar. This is 1,000 light years out from Earth. The pulsar, there's a star in there, a neutron star in the center. It's doing rotations 11 times per second. It's creating this pulse. It's what's shooting out. It actually makes noise. We've been able to record that noise, but I don't have it. But science can't really figure out why it makes noise. Why is it even doing this? I think it's just because God said that everything testifies of Him. I think the Vela pulsar just wanted to join in on
One thing you can't
worship
forget
course.
is the Scripture said that God did this, and the disciples prayed for it, and the fathers prayed for it. Lord performs signs and wonders.
Exactly.
Wonders are things that you never really know what the answer are or is. It just causes you to wonder.
Yep.
I don't like wonders.
I'm saying, wait, I want to know what something is, but
I'd rather have a sign than a wonder, but
yeah,
I'll take the wonder.
Over here, that's legible and plain.
Yeah. That's the Hourglass Nebula. That's 8,000 light years away. Kind of looks like an eye in the center, doesn't it? You can kind of see this. Here's the big eye, here's the pupil, and it's kind of blew up on the TV. You can't really see it, but there's even a little white speck in it, like you get when you take pictures of somebody's eye. It's there.
Have you done any study on where? I know this is out there. On where they believe heaven is in the.
I have not done any studies on that.
in the north.
Yes, in the north, and the constellation actually make a cross. And I forget the reasons that they believe that heaven is there. They get off biblical. I wish I could remember half of what I read. I'd be far better off. But it has to do with different biblical scriptures.
Well, I'm there with you because I knew the north. That was a long time I read, but I'm the same way. I get reading this stuff, and then I'm like, God, this is getting over.
I just do like a dump. I mean, my information dump. It makes me mad. But anyway, they can pinpoint where they believe heaven is and why they believe it, and it's pretty mind-boggling.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think God wants to keep us in the dark about stuff like that. I think He's made information like that available to us.
Yeah, you should just, if you get bored, just look on it. You'll come away going, wow, heaven really might be there.
But there's one place, and it's to the north, that there's not, if I remember correctly, that they can't find a lot of constellations in that direction. It's one kind of blank
And
area.
it's dark, and the way that it comes up, it makes a cross.
Yeah.
Like what we think of as a cross. And I know everybody's like, well, that's just some sign reading into something. But they have a lot more information or a lot more reasoning behind it than just some cross. I mean, it's pretty,
I'm gonna have to read on that.
it's pretty wild.
The eye of God, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that what they call it? The eye of God?
Yeah. That's 700 light years away.
What is it exactly?
We're not really sure exactly what that is. We know it's some kind of stars and dust and all this stuff, but we're not entirely sure what's causing that. That's called the Sombrero Galaxy. That is 28 million light years away.
Now, is that a computer animation? Is that an actual picture?
Now that is not an actual picture,
That's
but
just the way.
yeah, that again, that's shots that we have, and we've kind of made this rendering of what we believe it looks like. It is 50,000 light years wide and trillions of miles thick. It is massive, massive, massive. That's the Whirlpool Galaxy. Beautiful, beautiful galaxy. The pink there in all of that. Now, and that's actually a separate galaxy over here. And they were, when they first discovered this, they were actually afraid that this big galaxy here was going to pull in the little galaxy because they were afraid it was like just sucking it in. What they've determined, though, is that that second galaxy is so far away that there's no hope of that ever happening. Well, that will never happen. They just will eventually cross each other. And but we don't get a good idea of how far away they
But they
are.
think the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy, is kind of in that shape, don't they? In that spiral.
We are in a spiral. The center of ours, instead of being just a regular center like that, ours is a barred center. So that's, but the pink there is actually star birthing zones, areas of this galaxy. And scientists estimate, again, I don't know how they get this estimation, but they estimate that a star is born every second in this galaxy. Psalms 147, he telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names. Great is our Lord and of great power. His understanding is infinite. So every second, God is birthing a star and he's naming it. I can't imagine that. Every second, God is naming a star. He knows them all. And the same God that is naming a star every second sees the sparrow when it falls, but he also knows the number of hairs on our head. He's a big God.
But here's the crazy thing: he didn't die from any of that.
No. Let's look real quick. I want us to see all of these again, because the next picture that I'm going to show you is the most amazing of them all. And I don't have words to describe it. I'm just going to let it speak for itself. But we're going to look at all the pictures. We're going to take them in. Okay. So we'll go through them. That's the Milky Way. Close-up shot. That's what they think our galaxy looks like, the Milky Way galaxy. There's Earth. There's Earth again from 4 billion miles away. There's our sun. There's Betelgeuse. So there's Musifi. It's just get this in your head. all of these amazing things that we're seeing. Because the next picture is just shocking. And it's the greatest of them all. He made all of that.
Yeah.
And he died for us. Everything we just seen, he spoke it. It was made. But he died for us. There's one more picture. Actually, there's two more pictures, but there's another one that I want to show. This is very far away. They call it the X structure. And it's in the center of a galaxy. It's a black hole in the center of a galaxy. Now they call that an X structure. Looks like a cross to me.
Is that what you're talking about?
I can't remember. Trying to find it.
But that just reminds me of where the Bible declares, God proclaims that before the foundation of the earth, the Lamb was slain. And here we have the center of a galaxy, an X structure there. I wonder if that's just one of the ways God was proclaiming what he was doing.
If I'm not mistaken, that might be kind of where they pinpoint heaven at. I mean, it was pretty, it's pretty amazing. What they claim about it. Trying to find it.
We've went out in space, and hopefully I've done a good job of showing you just how big God is and how small we are. But I was also reading, and this was something else that 2 years ago, almost, just kind of blew my mind when I was reading. And I thought, well, if God is declaring who he is, even throughout the galaxies and the universe, if God is declaring and showing who he is, then surely he also has to declare and show who he is even in the tiny things. And has anybody heard of something called laminin?
Yeah.
Laminin.
Yeah.
Laminin. If you have done any study in biology, you probably know what laminin is. But laminin is a protein, and it literally holds clumps of cells together. And it tells the cells what they're supposed to be.
The picture of it's crazy.
Yeah. The fact that something like that exists is crazy, but
It's the shape of it.
but we have enough DNA in our bodies that if we were to stretch it out, we could go to the moon and back. That exists inside of our bodies. This laminin holds all of that together. It's like the rebar in concrete. It strengthens it and it gives it its shape and its form. Well, that's what laminin does to us. It literally gives us shape, gives us form. It tells the cells in our body what they're meant to be. And this is what laminin looks like. It's a cross. It's a cross.
Isn't that cool?
And of course it would be. Of course it would be. Do you know that the Bible declares this? Do you know the Bible declares? Colossians 1:15 through 17. If you ever want to know about the supremacy of who God is, read Colossians. Who is the image of the invisible God? Of course, this is speaking of Jesus, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. That word consist means literally. It literally means that by him all things are held together. Laminin, the glue of our bodies that holds our cells together in the shape of a cross. Of course it would be. God declared Jesus was the thing that held all things together.